Hi, I'm John Cleveland, and this is the Cut the Crap Year in Review for 2015, or the movies that should have never been made. First up, we have Aloha. Director Cameron Crowe tried this romantic dramedy starring Bradley Cooper, Emma Stone, and Rachel McAdams. Unfortunately for Regency Enterprises and Columbia Pictures, not only was this one of the worst films of the year, but a massive flop at the box office. With an estimated budget of $37 million and a gross box office return of only $26.3 million, the movie actually lost $10 million just by being made. Of course, when you have a controversy about one of your actresses who is supposed to be playing a Pacific Islander and half Japanese, being played by Emma Stone, one of the whitest actresses out there, you tend to have a little bit of backlash. And in this case, not only did it hurt the box office, but it hurt the overall movie. Next up, we have Fantastic Four. With an estimated budget of $120 million, when a movie fails as massively as it did, typically it's bad acting, bad casting, a bad script, bad production value. Yeah, it fits all those bills plus. Director Josh Trank actually blamed the studio for not being able to fulfill his vision. Well, had it not been for the Chinese box office bringing in a total of $130 million to boost up the domestic box office, with a global box office of $160 million, this would have been a monumental flop. Thank you, China, for making the Fantastic Four worth it. I'm sarcastic, yes. I'll tell you one thing, if there was a vision for this movie, it was completely blind. Next up, we have Black Hat. Chris Hemsworth was working with Michael Mann on this project to try to spread his acting wings as a hacker. Well, Chris had better hope that he's still worthy to wield Thor's hammer after this monumental flop. Not only was it horribly done and one of the worst movies of the year, it actually netted a gross loss of $42 million for Legendary Pictures. With an estimated budget of $70 million, a domestic box office of $8 million income, and a global box office income of only $20 million. When you make that much of a loss, I know why The Hitchhiker's Guide says the answer to everything is 42. Next up, we have We Are Your Friends, which obviously they weren't. The directorial debut of Max Joseph, better known for his MTV movie and show Catfish the TV show, starring Zac Efron as a dance DJ, was less than impressive than Max's show, leaving many to feel that they themselves had been catfished by a horrible project. Even with a budget of only $2 million, the film made $9.4, which, sounds impressive. But taking into consideration that only 2,333 theaters actually reported showing the film, with a return of an average of $758 from each, it's lackluster at best. We're not talking 758,000 or million, $758. I just do this web series as part of a passion project for me, but even I bring home more than that. Thankfully, Efron has a chance to rebuild himself as he is shooting Neighbors 2 with Seth Rogen right now, and Max Joseph is going back to Catfish. Next up is The Cobbler. This was painful to watch. Adam Sandler's first outing in quite a while as solely an actor was, well, to put it nicely, better than a long surgery without anesthetic. The acting was horrible, and the story, walk a mile in someone else's shoes. It still hurts to think about it. This was not a Happy Madison production, and therefore was not a project that Adam Sandler took personally, and it shows. The movie was absolutely horrible. And to not discredit some others that had horrible showings, we also have Pan, the Hugh Jackman starring origin story of Peter Pan, with Hugh Jackman playing Blackbeard. I can't begin to tell you how wrong of a project this was to begin with. And a monumental flop as well. I can't even find the numbers on this because the studio didn't want the numbers released. But, you know, when you're casting as bad guys, Wolverine, time to rethink your casting. Then we have Jupiter Ascending. Channing Tatum playing a, bodyguard of a maid who is destined for more things off of Earth. Basically, you have a not a sitcom, but a soap opera set in space. There was a little bit of a following with the female crowds, but not enough to be relevant at all whatsoever. And it's a monumental flop and one of the worst movies of the year. Recently, I spent quite a bit of time shopping in stores looking for movies, and they were out of quite a few titles. Jupiter Ascending was not one of them. Next, we had Mordecai, starring Johnny Depp as an investigator. You know, recently Johnny Depp came out and said that about every role, he takes the role as trying something different. Epic fail. This movie also starring Gwyneth Paltrow did so horribly that Redbox has constantly got copies of it. No one wants to see it. It's horrible. It's supposed to be off of a book series, and I've never even heard of the book series. Then we have Jem and the Holograms. I'll tell you one thing. When you have a running theme with some movies like G.I. Joe, Transformers, I've even heard that there's a Thundercats in the making. As long as there is a cult following, I mean, even Comic-Con had stands for these. That's great. You've got a fan base. Jem and the Holograms was not one of them. This is trying to cash in on some of the 80s nostalgia, and there's just no nostalgia for Jem and the Holograms. One of my best friends actually said recently that he wanted to go see Jem and the Holograms when it came out. Little did we know, it's come and gone. Then we have Seventh Son with Jeff Bridges. You know, personally I liked R.I.P.D., but you know, a lot of other critics and everything, you know, they didn't like it at all. This one I won't even try. The numbers on it were horrible, and frankly, I didn't even know this was out. The Last Witch Hunter with Vin Diesel. Yeah, likely believe that. When you're going for something mystical, get someone who's believable at never dying. I mean, sure, he's going to be doing the 8th Fast and the Furious movie, but when you do something that's stupid, give the movie-going public some credit for intelligence at least. Then we've got The Lazarus Effect. The Lazarus Effect had a pretty decent premise, but it was horribly executed. When you have a bunch of students trying to revive the dead, fine. We had that in Flatliners back in the 90s, and it launched quite a few careers. The Lazarus Effect was on the other end. I'm going to be surprised if I see many of them in many more movies at all. It was horribly done, and if it gets a sequel, believe me, that will be a coming cut the crap. Then we have Paul Blart, Mall Cop 2. I was unfortunate enough to have to pay to buy this because I couldn't get it on demand. And it was a waste. When you have a successful movie but make it a better movie overall. First off, with him being divorced at the beginning, he was looking for love in the first one. You've kind of killed the premise for the second one. And then just repeating the same old jokes. Yeah, it's a joke every now and then, but that doesn't make a movie. That makes a short. Paul Blart, the TV show, may have gotten a season. Maybe not. Then we have 50 Shades of Grey. I'll tell you one thing. The casting alone was horrible. Casting alone. The first half of the movie, I was cackling at how funny everything was. I thought it was one of the best comedies that I'd seen in a minute. And, after that, what they had for sex scenes was okay. However, much of the fan base were people who had read the books. And apparently, there's a lot more in the books than they were willing to put into the movie. Next time you make an adaptation of a novel, that the novel is known for one thing, make sure it's got that thing in the novel and in the book. 50 Shades of Grey was a complete disappointment for its fan base, and now come to know that they're going to do 2 and 3. If you're going to make 2 and 3, which you are, make sure it is a direct adaptation of the novel, or else you're going to have monumental flops coming, and no pun intended, or else no one will. Now, if you haven't heard of any of these movies, don't feel bad. The Cobbler went straight to Netflix. Black Hat, I've not really seen anywhere. Aloha got a lackluster release just this last weekend. Fantastic Four is everywhere. No one wants it. Mordecai, like I said, you can find it in any Redbox if you really want to waste the money on it. Pan will be coming out pretty soon. Paul Blart, if you really want it. 50 Shades of Grey is on demand. The Lazarus Effect is on Netflix already. Last Witch Hunter will be coming out soon, also with the Seventh Son. Gem and the Holograms, it might get a week of release and then go straight to Netflix. And Jupiter Ascending, check your local listings. If you have, or even worse, if you saw any of them, then you know just how bad they really were. Let us hope that in 2016, Hollywood will finally get its head out of its butt and finally cut the crap. But if they don't, prepare to see this face more, because that's what I'm here to do. Cut the crap.